What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Super Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Martin, and with me, as always, is Chris Green.
What's up, man? How you been?
I'm doing well. Uh, doing all right, I guess. It's Monday. My dog's going crazy in the back right now, so. But yeah, man. So not much going on in the world right now as far as DC or Marvel because of COVID, but fandom is coming up. So today we thought we would talk, or at least start with a DC analysis, and I think the first of those has to be Man of Steel.
Yeah, starting off, I guess what now will be known as the Snyderverse. Where that ends up going, who knows? But starting off, Zack Snyder's, view of what this world he could build was Man of Steel out in 2013. Um, I kind of remember when Henry Cavill was cast. I think at that point he had done Immortals.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's other than that, but Immortals for sure. And I remember thinking, there's no way he's big enough to play Superman. I kind of like the aesthetic from the comics more, where you have a more muscly Superman. He looks more heroic, more strong, etc., versus the Christopher Reeves version. So I remember being a little bit down on that. What was kind of your opinion?
I felt the same way as you. I thought, like, for someone to play Superman, they should look like a super type of man.
Right.
And even with that said, now in modern day, like, if you look back to, like, I think you mentioned Christopher Reeve or even, like, Brandon Routh, like, Brandon Routh got in good shape, but he had, like, the worst detailed suit to, like, really show that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It
he
just,
just looked like a normal human walking around.
he looked
And,
like a Michael Phelps type of build, like a slim,
yeah,
kind of like, you know what I mean? Like a real lean, muscular person, but like, he looked like a super swimmer, not like a Superman.
right. And I kind of, wondered, I guess Green Lantern was in a couple years before this, where it's basically all a CGI suit. And
Right.
I was like, well, they're going to have to do an entire CGI suit for Superman then, because how are they going to do it unless they're just basically copying, the older versions? But he probably has the most size. If you want to argue Ben Affleck in later movies, I thought that eventually when he got to the role and you started seeing, behind the scene photos, great choice.
Yes.
Jawline, chin, dimple in the chin somehow that some people have that I certainly don't. Um, I thought it was a perfect thing after that. So as we get to the casting, obviously you get your Lois Lane in there. You get some really heavy hitters, and I like that they do that in movies that have this type of gravity because it gives credence to the comic book world. Rather than plugging in all no-namers and then kind of maybe building something from the ground up. I feel like if you put good actors into roles that, even if they're minimal to what they're used to, they can really succeed and build the movie up.
I think you're right. And when I first heard about it, all I knew from Zack Snyder at that time was like 300. You know what I mean? He wasn't.
Right.
I watched Watchmen, but again, Watchmen caught me like it caught a lot of people. It was like too real, too fast.
Well,
Uh,
did you go into Watchmen knowing anything about the Watchmen characters?
no, and that's another thing. I had no clue about him. I didn't
Well, I
know.
also didn't, so I had the same thing, same feeling you did. I was like, what is this long fucking movie?
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. That's how
But
I
the more
felt.
that I learned about it, you learn, oh shit, okay, well this makes sense. And, the extended cut, which is well over 3 hours, is worth watching if you have the time.
Yes, I agree. Also, I agree to your point as far as like, at least as far as like the casting of like Henry Cavill. Like, I thought one of the coolest shots, which when it got to Justice League and he just shows up shirtless, it's super weird when he's like basically hairless on his chest. Because in Man of Steel, like when he gets
Oh, dude,
done
dude
off
is
the
a
oil rig,
werewolf.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. He's got hair all over him. He looks like a burly ass man, like a fucking
yeah,
lumberjack. And he goes and like steals clothes off clotheslines and stuff. But he's got a full beard, kind of long hair, and like real man chest hair, like. And
Right.
then in Justice League, he's like, you know, someone shaved his ass down while he was buried in a coffin.
They spent all the time shaving his chest, did not touch the mustache.
Nope.
Refused.
Yeah, face is too much, but go all out on the chest.
So when the movie opens, you get to see Russell Crowe, you get to see Michael Shannon, which we'll get into Michael Shannon a little bit later, but I think he was very undervalued
Yes.
because he's famous, but Kevin Costner's in the movie, Diane Lane's in the movie, Lawrence Fishburne's in the movie, like Russell Crowe. I mean, it's a crazy cast. Um, Here he is playing the seminal character, and if you remember back in the Christopher Reeves movies, General Zod was very like stoic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, really managed his emotions real well. Just had a superiority about things, and that was a fine interpretation. But to see Michael Shannon like absolute rage, like this is how things should be. This is how it's been on Krypton forever,
Yeah.
and this is what it's going to be moving forward. I think it was a good interpretation.
And you know, he survived on a sole purpose. You know what I
Right.
mean? But
Hyper focus.
I do want to kind of go back at least towards the beginning if we're gonna make this somewhat of an analysis of the movie. Is like I also agree with your um, idea as far as like you know casting these big names, but he did it in a way to support the not as recognizable cast. So like
Right.
you have Russell Crowe as his Krypton dad, you have Kevin Costner as his Earth dad, you have Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White, and then Diane Lane as his mom, and then
Right.
they surround the newcomers in, or not newcomers, but newer people in like Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, and
Well, yeah, because you basically have them in almost not necessarily flashback moments the entire movie, because
mm-hmm.
obviously we open up with Russell Crowe, but kind of. So
Yeah,
yeah, you didn't
exactly,
have them like chew up dialogue for half the movie.
right. They were there to support,
Right.
which they did very well. But as far as the beginning of the movie, and Zach at that time with the idea of starting a movie universe, he does it with the literal birth of Superman. Like that's how the movie starts. It starts with a
Right.
heartbeat. That's the first thing you hear
And
is this heartbeat through alien technology.
it's if you're going into a Man of Steel movie, you're thinking, all right, Superman movie. Yes, they've got to touch on this just like they always do in Batman movies, where it's the parents dying. We're going to see the birth. We're going to see the shuttles shoot off into space. What I did not expect is almost 20 full minutes of the entire world of Krypton and
Yeah.
like a world building Avatar style. I mean, you really got the sense of the technology, how efficient the society had gotten over years. So efficient that they were like, we don't need to add the weird variable of human birth or natural birth, I guess you could say. We're just going to create these pods, do it Matrix style, and this is the efficient way to go. And so
And
you get to see basically Zack Snyder say, look at these advanced creatures. They've got it all figured out, and then it turns out they don't.
right. And speaking of advanced, I mean, it was literally, you know, like basically a malleable type of steel that could go from like liquid to metal, uh,
Right.
that ran through all of their tech. And I believe that's what even rumored was like what was being harvested so much off of Krypton. So like, you know, Superman literally is a man of steel. Like that's like
Yeah,
essentially
that's a
the
good
idea
point.
of his family's background and his world's background, or at least where he's from in his world.
Yeah, I mean, you've got they basically their answers to, flying efficiently isn't always necessarily these big ships. It's these animals that,
Mm-hmm.
have these certain wing patterns, etc. And they mimic some of their ships over that wing pattern. I did have as we open the scene, we have the birth. Obviously, there's panic that's raining down. Zod decides to, with his group of insurgents, crash the party on the higher up council, where we learn of obviously he's the general of the army for the entire planet. We also learn Jor-El's position as basically an advisor slash scientist slash inventor slash a well-respected member who disagrees with the council, but not to the degree that General Zod obviously does. I had a question in obviously the confrontation between Jor-El and General Zod. If he's been bred to fight basically his entire life, that's what his purpose is for. Why the fuck was Jor-El giving it to him? Like, how was Jor-El, who was born to be a scientist, born to be his role, how was he able to fight as well, even better than General Zod? Do you think?
Hmm. That's a good question.
Because he
Uh,
handled him, I mean, easy
yeah,
until he was looking the other way.
yeah. I think. I mean, God, I don't know. That's a
I've
good
always just
question.
kind of I've always just kind of wondered because they make such an emphasis on you were born designed for this role.
Hmm.
It's why we see him adapt so much quicker to the elements on Earth than Superman was able to because he was able to hone stuff immediately, um, like flight or control his senses after the second attempt, etc. So that always kind of made me wonder. I also sort of wondered, once Superman or Kal-El is sent into his, into space, and he's entering Earth's atmosphere. Krypton gets blown up. How in the world was his spacecraft not seen by anything on Earth, the U.S. government, NASA, where Zod's ship absolutely was? If they
Right.
came from the same planet, we can't say, okay, well maybe the material that's so malleable, maybe it has a cloaking mechanism, unless Zod wanted to be seen and uncloaked it. Is that like a nitpicky thing, or is that like
Well,
a
as far as the tech, I would say when if we're gonna play it in real Earth age terms, Henry Cavill is about my age, as far 30-ish in the movies,
yeah,
or
30,
played
30 and
30-ish,
grown? Yeah.
which means he landed on Earth in that movie around when I was born, which is like 1984. So I would
Okay.
imagine the argument there is that their tech is so advanced back then that it just moved in such a fast way, and maybe even had the
Oh, I
tech to
see.
cloak itself, that
Hmm.
to our tech in the 80s, there's no way it could have picked up on it.
So we advanced so much by the time Zod shows up that now
Right.
we can see that. Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah. uh as far as Jor-El being able to beat up General Zod, I mean, that might just have to do with him being as smart as he is and maybe knowing he needs to be able to fight, because he does have obviously like family armor, uh, an armored
Oh,
suit.
that's true. Yeah,
So,
and his desire to have the human or the natural birth,
hmm,
I should say, does kind of deviate from the natural plan, maybe. So
right,
maybe he was just an outside thinker in general.
yeah, I believe that would probably be the best way to argue those two things, or at
So
least start.
could 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 Jor-El been convinced by his wife a little more succinctly that, hey, let's all leave? He seems so certain that this is just how it's going to be. We're dying. Doesn't matter. We've got this one vessel.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I, did it feel like Jor-El was like, we've made mistakes as a people. We deserve to die in this. Someone else without our viewpoints deserves to start anew.
I think so, because I mean that's a good point too. Um,
Because the first thing the mom brings up is, hey, they're gonna ostracize him on Earth.
right,
Now,
and
now Jor-El is defiant, like they can't. How are
right,
they going to pick on him? He'll be a god, but still, that was like the initial worry, and so you would think the parents would say, all right, we'll just go with him.
yeah, and maybe that's the point, in the fact that like he's saying they can't, he'll be a god to them, but at the same time, just because you have that physical strength doesn't mean you're going to be, which is what Kevin Costner teaches them, is like, it's not time to show your strength just because you have it.
Right. And
And
we'll get into that. We'll get
yeah.
into to Kent's parenting here in a second.
Yeah.
So we get the natural born Krypton who didn't get to adjust to the Kryptonian atmosphere, to where
Right.
we see later in the movie when that atmosphere is presented, he obviously he struggles with it. However, there's some different, challenges being on Earth, feeling that you're different. Uh, I like that they showed his struggles through grade school. I think it's something that it made me feel, endeared to this character because everyone fucking hates to see a kid get picked on.
Yeah.
Um, you know, obviously his mom comes to the rescue. You're gonna get picked on more probably.
Yeah.
Uh, but for him to have to struggle through all that stuff, uh, I liked personally. I liked the direction of the flashback. Him having to go through different motions or different portions of his life growing up and showing the challenges of that.
Well, and I mean, the great points for the flashbacks in general are to show different aspects of his power hitting him at different ages. So you have you have him at the youngest where he hears everything,
Right.
and it drives him crazy. But then he already knows that he has the ability to like heat stuff up with his eyes because he heats up that handle so the teacher doesn't open the door.
Right.
And he actually, he controls it in such a way that he controls it towards the handle. It's not just like a beam of light shining out and killing people.
Right.
Which also could just be that's how strong it was at the time. Like he couldn't even form, uh, you know, rays out of his eyes basically, but
Yeah, because
he
there's a
knew how to
scene.
transfer heat.
Well, there's a scene. Yeah, I think it's more of a heat transfer versus like rage spray, like a Cyclops
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
from the X-Men, etc.
Yeah, and then you get like the different times where, which it's weird because one of his strengths that they show is basically like his willpower and his ability to choose. So like when the bus crashes into the river or lake or whatever, sitting it, everyone's sitting there drowning, and he makes the choice to like push the bus out of the water and save everyone, right? Uh,
Yeah, after being picked on right before the crash.
right, and
Yeah.
it showed his strength, uh, but in a different kind of way versus like when he gets picked on basically at his house, which I guess the kids got off at the same bus stop and followed him, or they were at, I don't know. I don't know how all those kids ended up at his backyard. Uh,
Yeah, that
and then
seemed weird to me, but yeah.
he grabs the rail or the fence post and then
Right.
bends it.
Right. So, what do you think of Jonathan Kent's style of parenting? Because I think it's a classic, not necessarily good cop, bad cop, between the father and the mother, but more of the disciplinarian, rule setter, and then you have the nurturer, kind of caring relationship on the other side.
I think the way, speaking of cops, I think the way that Kevin Costner presented that version of his dad is how we would all want like the perfect white male cop to think. Uh,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like somewhat of a good old boy because he's coming off the farm or whatever, uh, and just wanting to do good for people, but also realizing you're gonna have to make a choice at some point.
Right.
Uh, but just I mean, it's that his version is like the modern day like Fourth of July American flag dad. Uh, in all the right ways, in all the positive ways. And I
Right.
say
Where he
that
kind
coming
of,
from a yeah.
yeah. Go ahead. Keep going.
No, I was just saying I say that coming from a place of like West Texas where I've seen those types of guys.
Right. Yeah, I felt like you know it's probably what his dad taught him, and his dad before that. It's
Right,
learned
right.
behavior when eventually have a son or a daughter and you parent. But that's the only way to provide structure for a child that not only is different but has immense power. Um, what's the James Gunn movie that sort of shows what happens? If a kid's got superhero powers but he goes evil.
Oh, I
Brightburn.
forgot. Yeah, yeah. I know. I still haven't got to see that. I want to see it though. I heard it was all right.
Yeah, it's not the best movie, but it kind of just shows you have kids will eventually twist off, but the aura of Superman and the allure to Superman is that he's Captain America times 100. He's the good. He's the good son. He's gonna always choose the right thing to do. Um, and so maybe they didn't have to necessarily deal with that. But the self-control that he shows during multiple things is just a tribute to what Jonathan Kent was able to provide. But it only works if his mom is on the other side, uh, giving him that comfort.
Right.
Because his dad didn't show up at the school to talk to him out of the closet.
Right.
You know.
He was at work.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So we have Clark on his own. You know, we're going back and forth between, jobs. We have the cool moment where he kind of takes his revenge out on the drunken bar guy that throws a beer can at him. Obviously, destroys the guy's rig.
Oh my god, that was so funny. You know what I mean?
It's
Like
so funny.
Zach, that's probably what.
Wonder,
No, I'm sorry.
like, how did he get away doing that, making no noise?
Right.
Was that guy the last guy at the bar? It was a pretty funny scene.
I mean, maybe he took it and flew up. Oh, I guess he didn't know how to fly then, so he couldn't have flown in the air and did it. But
it was like a suspended rig up in the air.
Yeah.
Multiple telephone poles.
I think it's super funny. Just that that's kind of how Zach shows his humor. It's a visual. Yeah. It's visually funny.
Right.
It's not corny jokes. You know what I mean? Like
right.
that was like such a big piece of humor. Where no one had to say anything.
And I skipped over obviously him saving a number of people from the oil rig fire disaster, where he basically leaps into action. He opens the door to the
on fire.
Yeah, he's literally on fire, which tells me he's been burned before. He knows it doesn't hurt him. He almost at that point seems like a traveling vigilante.
Yeah.
Where he kind of just goes, he's working these small ins and outs jobs where he can be in a position to help people at night or during the day if there's a disaster, etc. And I think that's another Jonathan Kent taught thing, where do not be in a position where you're going to be super noticed. Be incognito, kind of be a loner, survival. And so he's just taking jobs like that. And, there was a rumor going around where he was obviously laying in the deep ocean, and then there were a couple whales that flew by. Maybe Aquaman saved him.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see a nod like that later in the movie. I kind of wish Aquaman would have been like, you're welcome. But I don't know where Aquaman would have been in 2013 at this version of the Snyderverse.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring up the idea of him being like a traveling vigilante, because that's, I've never thought about it before in those terms, but if you thinking about it in those terms, like Batman's a dude who's stayed in his same city forever and ever, fighting the same crime. Right. You know what I mean? So he knows what he's dealing with. He knows how people change. He knows how evil people can be. Versus like Superman just saving people on a whim. You know what I mean? Because it just happened right then and there.
More disaster or stuff like that.
Right. But even, just like standing up for the bartender chick, and
right.
saving his, saving the people from the oil rig, and you know what I mean, like they're and then leaving, so he basically can't be tracked. Versus someone like Batman, who's like, I want people to talk about me, but the idea is to like he says, I'm only real when it's useful.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like he comes out when he's needed, but he makes it so that hopefully people won't want to do anything because of how brutal he can be.
Right. It's like almost sort of like doing good in a completely 180 direction, or maybe driven goal than what Batman has.
Right.
And he also is just, not jaded by the process at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't seem. I mean, maybe he is a little tired in that bar, but he seems to be okay with just kind of living his life day to day.
It's not really the best term, but Superman's kind of like a hit it and quit it kind of guy.
Yeah.
Just knock it out and run away.
Right. Right.
But
So as we continue through, we see him pick up a job, kind of tagging around Lois Lane. We get our introduction to her. She's obviously a go-getter,
hmm
someone that kind of ruffles the feathers of maybe some establishment men in general.
oh man,
She's a
yeah,
reporter for the Daily Planet, Pulitzer Prize winning, I believe she said,
yes,
when she's making an argument to Perry White. Um, she gets to go to this location, which looks to be full of ice. I don't know if it's, they kind of make it seem like it's still in the United States, but I don't think necessarily.
yeah. It seems like it's off the Alaska. It's off or near Alaska.
Okay. Well,
That's what it feels like.
that brings me to kind of a. I'll make my point, and then I'll ask you a question about a
Sure.
theory. We find a scout ship. Obviously, Superman has found this scout ship location before, or as he shows up on this location, um, he maybe uses some X-ray vision and notices that there's something in the ice. Because as they described it, there's about 18 to 20,000 years of ice surrounding the walls of this, um, what ends up to be a ship. That's what they've got the drilling rig on top, kind of going down in the ice to see what it is, and that's kind of what the project is.
hmm
They theorize it as a Soviet era, battleship, but because the ice around it is so thick and so old, it can't be that. Uh, Lois kind of goes out at night when she's not supposed to kind of investigate, get some pictures on her own, which
hmm
has probably been her MO to get where she's been and where she is now. And
Right.
she sees, basically, she's following this new hire, Clark.
hmm
We see a tunnel of ice being drilled out, so obviously we see he's using heat ray vision, and then magically he's on the scout ship. Some events take place on the scout ship. Obviously, Lois gets attacked by one of the floating, I'm not sure what they even call them on Krypton, but one of the floating helpers, maybe.
Yeah.
Uh, and Superman has to repair her, etc. Superman's kind of walking around. He's looking, through what's on the ship, and he notices a dead body. I think technically there's like 5 dead bodies,
Yes.
uh, but there's one pod that's open, and I think a lot of people have theorized that it's actually Kara Zor-El, which would be his cousin, also known
hmm
as Supergirl. If that's the case, that means if you go look up like on DC Extended Universe, etc., she was part of a mission, as explained by Jor-El later, that Krypton took people off their planet and then went into the universe to go spread basically the Kryptonian.
Right. So we're gonna split these together, and we'll cut out the dead audio from earlier. But matching these back up, we were talking about the idea that Kara is in one of the or Kara what is her name? Kara L.
Yeah, Kara Zor-El.
Kara Zor-El came out of the empty hatched pod with the door open.
Yeah, so as everyone knows, Kara Zor-El is the older cousin of Superman, and based on the DC Extended Universe, uh, she was sent out from Krypton on kind of an exploratory mission, and obviously with the scout ship being 18 to 20,000 years old worth of ice surrounding it,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of will put the two to two together. There's some restrictions as far as could that actually be her? Is she 18,000 years older than everybody else? What the ramifications are of that. Maybe she's dead on Earth. How do Kryptonians age on Earth? There are a lot of unanswered questions that come from that. I think in the end, it's maybe just more of an Easter egg that's fun to get people thinking. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. I don't necessarily think that Kara could last 18,000 years or whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
in my mind, it's gonna mean either like tons and tons of descendants, which means tons and tons of other types of Kryptonians on Earth, or she's just extremely old. Because again, Wonder Woman is extremely old, and this would make Kara way older than Wonder Woman.
Right. But it definitely would mean super powered, half human, quarter human, eighth humans, because we see what happens when, Atlantis and human
Right.
mother, we get Aquaman. So,
That's a
um,
great point that, there are uh, interspecies mixings happening.
yeah, we definitely have seen the results of that directly within the Snyder universe.
Right. Uh,
So,
yeah.
so with the scout ship, we obviously with Lois being there, trying to find who the mystery man is that now works on our crew that's now found his way into the scout ship. Um, I guess we kind of transition from that to after Superman heals her, we get the conversation between him, Jor-El, and everything that involves Krypton. A very brief history lesson, and then all of a sudden he's got the suit on, and he must have been told he can fly because we get to see a very trial and error Superman flying, and it kind of was a nitpick that people had about this version versus Christopher Reeves. You know, with it being such a violent takeoff for the majority of this, and I kind of prefer that. I mean, it would seem like a violent, thing, especially if you're just learning it.
Yeah. That is my take because, they show in BVS that when he saves Lois from falling off of LexCorp Tower, he safely flies her to the ground and then takes off and flies back up. Doesn't crack the ground there. Uh, he doesn't crack the ground a lot of times. He doesn't crack the ground in the nightmare scenario when he actually lands in like the sand pit kind of, I guess, dungeon area where they have all of them strapped up, including Bruce.
Right.
Uh, so I think that's just a learning curve showing that he has so much power, and that's the first time he's expelled it to be able to like break gravity and fly.
And don't you
First,
prefer that? I mean, I feel like if it was such a natural thing, like maybe his strength is, that he would have accidentally flown swinging on the swing set when he's 8.
yeah, totally. I think you know. Luckily, it took his real dad's consciousness to let him know what type of true power he holds, because again, throughout they show throughout his life he learns about his different powers. He can push a bus out of water, he can heat up a doorknob, he can hear everything in the world, he can hear all these crazy voices and he doesn't know how to harness it. And now he's at this age of like 30s, where he understands how much power he has and now he's got to learn how to harness it.
Right.
uh, but flying's tricky, and so is getting up in the air. You know, I don't know how many
Exactly.
times you've tried flying, but it starts with a jump, and you know, jumping has its different levels.
Yeah. Yeah, if you barely jump off a step, you're not going to go as hard.
You're gonna come right
So
back down.
you got to really leap.
Yeah, and so I think I think that's a perfect, because it is the first time he flies, right? Like he
Yeah,
jumps a couple of times and then he like kneels down, harnesses his power, and you see him starting to pull gravity when he
right,
kind of cocks his fist to the snowy floor, and he you can see that he feels it, so he just shoots like again like faster than a speeding bullet, or faster than a
right.
locomotive or whatever. Like he's fast, and part of being fast and part of being able to fly involves breaking certain boundaries and barriers, and
Well, and I
take
did like how they also show Zod has, when they first land on Earth, they also have the reclamation to flying in the way that he did. I mean, I'm going to call her Ronda Rousey,
yeah,
leaps into the barn and doesn't fly over to the barn. She super jumps. And
right,
when Zod's initially fighting Cal before he actually learns to harness flight, he like bear crawls up the side of the building.
right.
So it's very much like, oh, I don't even know if I can fly or not. It's just I can jump really far.
Yeah, there's these different boundaries that you can get past. And again,
Right.
and not again, but like, speaking of flight, like if you've ever taken off on an airplane, it doesn't just, slowly get off the ground. I mean, you got to drive around to the actual runway, and then once you're in the perfect spot, you fucking
Right.
floor it. You know what I
You
mean?
floor it. You are leaned back in your seat.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think,
So
yeah,
when we get the introduction to Zod, I was going to ask, did you feel the horror element? I mean, it was very like all the lights are
yes,
out, all the technology's taken over. It's translated in every language around the world. Everyone is huddled around whatever device they have. It's taken over the airwaves, and it's a distorted, kind of creepy picture.
it not only takes over TVs, but it takes over like analog radios inside little huts,
Right.
uh, and it broadcasts in every language, and the whole "You Are Not Alone." Yeah, I totally got that horror aspect, and even the sounds that I don't think Junkie XL was on this one. I think it was all Hans Zimmer, but like the the sound that you know what I
Yep.
mean, that build
Yep.
up and then the light bulb crack. I mean, very horror, very alien type of horror too. I mean, it's same kind of feelings that you get from like Signs or
Yeah. Yeah,
along
that's
those
what it
or
made me think
X
of.
Files type stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's this different, it's this unknown. Like what the fuck is that? It's not some girl going, it's not The Ring or
Right.
anything like that. It's this otherworldly type of sound, which I don't know if Hans Zimmer came up with that sound effect or whatever. Uh,
Well, I'll
obviously,
tell you, if you remember, I think it's The Dark Knight. The opening theme for the Joker has a
oh yeah,
very like distressing noise
yep.
that kind of felt similar, even though it was different. But yeah, I mean, that's immediately what I thought of.
You're exactly right. I heard that sound, and I don't know if it's where it came from, but I heard that sound once, and I distinctly remember hearing it. And I was visiting a friend in England, in London, and there they have public trains and stuff you can take everywhere, kind of like a
Yeah.
subway type train, but they're above ground. And I was at a train stop, and we were waiting to get on, and I heard that sound from The Dark Knight, that slow build up, and I'm sure it's probably not the exact sound, but the exact same like coming from far away. That you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was so weird, and I mean I remember that full on distinctly, like super vividly, like. And I even thought I was like, damn, I wonder if this is where like the sound effects guys got that from.
Yeah, maybe because man, it's just a unique sound, but very distressing, and immediately takes you to horror.
Yeah, and that's how
And
that's
Zod's intent is not to be like, "Hey, coming from outer space here,
right.
one of our guys. Why don't you give him back to us?" I mean, he's trying to assert a dominance over a planet that he, quite frankly, he doesn't give two fucks about.
Yeah, and I think it's I the imagery part I think is super cool. Once the "You Are Not Alone" thing stops going, and then you see that static snowy figure that's moving around, and it looks like Zod with like one of those breathers on.
Right. He's got a helmet
On,
on.
yeah, only pixelated in that snowy static stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, but that kind of added. I mean, obviously, as an audience member, we know that's General Zod, but
Right, but it
as a
does look very like alien.
right
If you were to be like, you don't know it's a suit, you don't know anything.
right, and if you're a human in that real world scenario that is playing out in the movie, like if we saw something like that, not being an audience member, but just being a member of Planet Earth, and then one day your computer screen goes all black and white and snowy, and you see this weird fucking figure talking to you, you would think one, I've been hacked, or two,
Yep.
this is it. This is the end
Yep.
because it's on
Yep.
everybody's screen. It's not just America or Canada. It's any sort of broadcasting device, whether it's a TV or a radio, playing this message.
Right.
And that is a dominance that no nation will ever have.
Right. Right,
So
because
yeah,
they've got something that's able to defeat it.
right,
Able to counteract it or block it or
right,
yeah. So we basically get the bargain. Uh, Superman's gonna give himself up. He outwardly doesn't trust Zod. You know, he goes to church, which is a very seems like kind of rural Kansas. You grow up, you go to church on Sundays to kind of get some guidance or advice.
Mm-hmm.
um, which kind of plays into the kind of Messiah savior figure that he is, and it does appear to be during the movie. Zack Snyder's talked about his faith in Christianity ad nauseum. So I think that element plays a role, but not so much that it overshadows the movie, even if it feels a little overhanded sometimes, or
Yeah.
heavy-handed rather.
Yeah. I saw the imagery there. It's pretty obvious, and I think in in all aspects, it's just trying to show. I think what Zach was trying to show with Superman being a Jesus godlike figure, that visually with those parallels and hints, is probably what every preacher is trying to get through our heads in like a traditional church.
Right.
Like they're trying to do it through words and sermons, and Zach's like, well, here's a fucking movie, you know, and I'm not gonna
Right.
use
Isn't it interesting? Like a lot of detractors, maybe of Christianity, would say, "Where's the proof? Come down. If you're all powerful, show me." But I
right,
think what's important in this movie is that, all right, here's someone that is all powerful, and you
and you
do
are
still
seeing
have
it.
detractors.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're seeing it, but yet you do still have detractors. So I think it's an interesting, maybe a little commentary on humanity, on what our expectations are, what it takes us to be convinced about something, what is considered proof, and what we consider to be, fucking fake news at this point.
and also the idea, at least to me, the idea of someone who literally is just trying to do good and people will still persecute them
Right, because we always assume
because they're
humanity's got a
different.
motive,
Right.
or yeah, something's different, or I'm jealous he can do this, or and I can't do that,
Why
or
didn't I get the powers? Why can't I
exactly.
fly?
Right.
Why does this
Yeah,
white man get to do it? Well,
exactly.
that's the story, you
Right.
know. On,
Yeah.
again, not and I'm not a like pro white person or anything like that, but in the idea of like this, it's like this is what those stories are trying to push, or like those stories about Jesus and stuff. Like it's not the same idea. Obviously, it's not. There's no aliens and anything like that. But like if we saw that really happen in real life, like as people detest is going to happen one day, God will come back down and Jesus will come back down. Like that's probably that's an idea of what how crazy it would be to people,
Right. It
all
would
over
be
the
that
world.
bonkers, like, oh, it is real, and wow, what happens now?
Once it happens, every religion is, voided
Right.
because here's the proof. Like you said,
Right.
here
A-
is what's in
And I
front of
think
us.
and I think Zack Snyder, left it still open to interpretation, but that's just kind of the overtones I
Oh
got.
yeah, yeah,
Again,
yeah, totally.
heavy-handed at a lot of points, but not enough to ruin the movie
Right,
for me, or make the movie about something else. However,
right,
the basis of Superman is someone to come help save people if he can, but not necessarily save your soul from damnation or anything like that.
right,
So I
right.
think a line is kind of clearly there. um, at this point, we really get to see the full focus of General Zod, and man, he's focused. But clearly, he's literally only born for that focus. Could you imagine him like managing a Subway sandwich shop? Like that's
God, I mean, if he
that's
managed a
the end of the
Subway
five
sandwich
dollar
shop,
foot long.
if he managed Subway, there would have never been a Jared Fogle incident. You know what I mean?
No, but
Like
there also
that
would
dude have
be
been
no
taken out immediately.
there'd be no $5 foot long deals.
Oh
There'd be
no,
no deal. You're
no,
paying full price. And
yeah.
but maybe he would run a very efficient shop, very
Honestly,
focused.
I'd love to see a sketch of Michael Shannon being a boss at Subway.
That would be a
You know what
really
I mean?
funny skit.
Why is the mayo empty? You
Right.
know, we have more mayo in the back.
Yeah, they would have a lot of there'd be a lot of employee turnover.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There, no one would last.
Yeah, so at this point I've kind of waited to introduce General Swanwick, because at this point, if you follow anything Zack Snyder related, we know that the intention of that character is that he was Martian Manhunter.
Yes.
I like that in theory. if we get to see it in fruition and he becomes that character. If it's open-ended and we don't see that character, what the fuck is Martian Manhunter doing not helping?
Right.
He doesn't help in Man of Steel. He doesn't help in Batman versus Superman. What are you doing?
I think I have some theories on that.
All right.
I think number one, I think we'll straight up see him as Manhunter now. I think there's no denying that that won't happen. It will. Uh, I think he is the universe's version of a non-interventionist. Uh, even though he works for the military, his role in the military may be a peacekeeper. You know what I mean? He doesn't want to fight.
Well, we
Um,
know that he can shapeshift, so is that character as a military person with that high ranking made up? He, what did he grow up and spend any time on Earth? How was he able to achieve that rank with everyone knowing who he is?
right. Uh, that there's a lot of questions for that character, and obviously
A lot.
the biggest one is going to be like, why the fuck did you not do anything?
Right.
And I that may be his big reveal in Justice League once everything calms down after Steppenwolf is killed and all that kind of shit. Is when they meet up and have the big chat, as like, he's probably gonna. I imagine Bruce Wayne's gonna go up to him and say the exact same thing he said in the email to Diana. Is like, who are you? Where have you
Right.
been? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like what? Like who are you? What are you? Where have you been? What's
Right.
the deal? You, I
Oh,
mean, you saw Superman get nuked. You know what I mean?
yep.
So
We
yeah,
we saw, yeah, that, and I think that's the, part of the Zack Snyder revealing some things for later movies, like maybe his version of Justice League, where I've got some storyboards, and it turns out that he's talking to Lois, and it really is Martian Manhunter. Well, you've waited 3 movies to flesh out a character that we've only seen as kind of a helpless bystander.
right.
So, a very interesting, unless you're showing me storyboards from an Ultimate, Super Ultimate Cup of BVS, where you just couldn't get Martian Manhunter in there because that seemed like the end of the world. He was ready to let nuclear intervention occur
Can
before actually intervening.
I want to take this Martian Manhunter theory, not even a theory, but this idea of Martian Manhunter. I want to put a conspiracy theory twist in it
All
and
right.
say that the lady that's always following him around, what if she is, what's her name, the other Martian? Um, I
Well,
don't,
we know that her name was Carrie. Carol. She's supposed to be Carol Ferris, which is a love interest of Green Lantern Hal Jordan, which Blake Lively played in Green Lantern.
oh, that's the same person?
That's supposed to be, so they list her as Carrie Ferris in like the IMDb, but that is absolutely who that's supposed to be. And Zack Snyder had made a mention of it.
Oh, see, I never caught that. Holy
Yeah.
shit.
Right? So like after Man of Steel, I'm thinking, holy shit, we're about to get Green Lantern.
Right.
And it doesn't pan out.
Man, I don't remember that at all.
So if you
Oh,
so at the very, very end of the movie, when you have that scene where she says, I think he's hot,
yes.
if you see your name tag, it says Ferris.
That's crazy.
Isn't that bonkers?
I did not know that at all.
Yeah, so in my mind, and that character plays like Star Sapphire, which is actually a villain for a while in the comics. So I just know she had a love interest for a while with Hal Jordan. I don't know. They'll probably never flesh out that character, but they kept that character around for 2 separate movies. So Zack Snyder maybe wanted to do something with that, and then just never got to be able to do a Green Lantern or introduce it the way he wants.
Major Carey Ferris. There it is.
Isn't that crazy?
That is wild.
So, so back to Zod. Yeah, yeah, whether Martian Manhunter thing works out or not, whether we see maybe him show up, I don't know if they shot any scenes in with Harry Lennox, in a bodysuit where he could be Martian Manhunter. Probably not. Maybe they do some reshoots.
Ooh, I
I'm
what
not
do
sure.
you? How do you think they make him into Martian Manhunter? Do you think it's going to be CGI, or do you think they'll do like a practical makeup effect? Because
Well, see, that's
personally,
the deal. They'll have to do a CGI if it's like a little cliffhanger, like him sitting, because we know for sure he says that he shot everything that he drew. So if that's the
hmm,
case, that scene is there. So they
right,
will have to replace him with CGI, unless they're because then you're really putting Martian Manhunter within the rest of the story.
right.
If it's not beyond just a little teaser.
I
So I'd say
would
CGI for this movie.
I would love to. I wonder if it's CGI or not. I would love to see it go the practical effect way and do like a great makeup job like they did in Suicide Squad, where
Oh, yeah, 100%.
his Martian Manhunter is like Killer Croc style. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would rather the practical for sure.
It just seems so much more believable, and it also just seems so much more tangible. You know what I mean? Like it feels
Right,
like you could reach out and touch that dude. You know what I mean?
for sure. Yeah, I completely agree.
But I'm I look forward to that Martian Manhunter, and then obviously that whole Carrie Ferris kind of kills my idea. But it also does make sense of why, even as a support character, why Zach like built her up over two movies and not just one.
Right, it's different than just like oh, maybe this is Kara Zor-El.
Mm-hmm.
That can just be easily dismissed as like, look, we're gonna have a pot open, maybe we'll do a Man of Steel 2 one day,
Yeah,
etc.
planting
But yeah,
seeds.
you keep that character along, like Blake Lively's character is a little bit different in Green Lantern, but she
Mm-hmm.
heads like the Ferris aircraft. It's like an academy. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but uh, it's like the Ferris name is on like some aircraft airline center or something.
Hmm.
So it's a little bit different, maybe some family money type thinking there, but yeah, that's immediately when I saw the name tag, I was like, oh shit, that's what they're doing.
Damn, I had no
And
idea. You
remember,
got.
that's 2013. We have
Yeah,
no idea what's coming at that point,
yeah.
you know.
Fuck. Yeah.
So, so
7
with
years
Zod,
ago.
I kind of wanted to go with the initial fight that we have in this little tiny Kansas town.
Yeah.
Um, Once he figures out that he disables Zod's mask, and obviously he's like disoriented, he can't really fight. Why would your next thought not be to do that same approach against fucking, I'm gonna call her Ronda Rousey and Kevin Nash if you watched wrestling growing up,
Kevin Nash.
because that is a giant fucking dude, and they went to town on him until
Yeah.
he finally, luckily, got her face mask off.
I
He
am
should have done
not.
that in this like right away.
I'm not gonna do a disservice to her. I will call her by her character name, Feora. I think she's a bad bitch, and she auditioned
Ronda
to.
Rousey is a bad bitch to me,
Yeah,
like
yeah. Well,
whooping ass.
Feora, the girl who auditioned for Feora, or no, I'm sorry, Gal Gadot auditioned for Feora before she ever
Oh, really?
auditioned for before she auditioned for Wonder Woman.
Oh,
Uh,
that's interesting.
yeah. Um, but yeah, they beat the shit out of him. Very
Like they
much
really
so.
like the strength level. I don't know if it's because of the suits they had, but it
Yeah.
almost appeared like they took all the immediate benefits of the yellow sun that maybe their actual Kryptonian skin wouldn't take because they weren't used to that.
Right.
Initially I kind of wondered, but they just seem so much stronger in a Doomsday style stronger.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Uh,
was like not close.
and also, where's this tall Kryptonian from? I mean, he's like the only
I
one.
don't know. But
It's
you
weird
remember there
because
was a tall, like brute Kryptonian, like in the Christopher Reeves. So I wonder if they just kind of,
copied off that a little bit or
yeah, we
pulled that
got two
idea
guys and a girl.
in a pizza place. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, they I don't really know as far as that goes. I love the little personal battle between Feora and Christopher Maloney. Um, I I I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know why your first move wouldn't be to do that though.
Yeah, the
But
minute
so,
you figure it out, because the second part of the fights that he has with the other two characters is after that happens, because they drag Zod away back to the ship.
I'm gonna say maybe it's shock from the experience because I mean that's his first fight in a suit uh,
Maybe so.
On Earth, you know, because he gets the suit and then aliens come and find him
Well, but he
and they
does give
pull
the
him onto the
cocky
suit.
comment. He kind of gives the cocky comment, similar to like what Bruce does in BVS, of like, yeah, breathe it in. Guess what? Like, yeah, it's a little bit harder to fight when your senses are like that, isn't it? Like, he kind of takes a moment to kind of pat himself on the back.
Yeah, and again that's like inexperience because there's a great meme or GIF or whatever of him fighting Zod, and he tries the same attack on Batman and BVS, and it's the same punches. But you know, he starts with the 1-2 punch on Zod, and then it fades over to the same punch sequence on Batman, and Batman just blocks it and fucking beats the shit out of him. So
Yep.
he's only got this one route that he like really knows to do because
And he's only
Superman,
really ever needed to do that.
right? Because
You know, he's
Superman's
not doing leg whips and,
right. He's
you
not a
know,
well. He's also not a fighter. He's a savior. You know what I mean?
right, right, right.
He helps people in need. That type of thing. And so I think that's just a straight up inexperience on the battlefield, which you could kind of put on his dad Jor-El. You know what I mean? Like
Right, I agree.
Jor-El was a smart guy who obviously, like we talked earlier, learned how to fight. Wasn't bred a fighter
Right.
versus so he's gets this cockiness of like, haha, your breathing sucks. But then he's like, oh, but they can get used to it, just like I did. Uh,
Right.
so I think that's just a little bit of inexperience and maybe letting his cockiness or his ego kind of protect him for a minute.
Yeah, I can see that point because this is really the first fleshed out fight that he's had to be in.
Yeah,
I'm sure he imagined other fights as one punch and done,
right.
technically. And that's why he doesn't fight, etc. So,
Yeah,
the military, and I think kind of an assemblage of like America trusts this guy now is after everyone has their guns drawn on him, after everyone gets taken away back to their ship, they kind of put their guns down and they realize, all right, you are on our side. Kind of a moment of
this
trust that
man is
maybe,
not our enemy.
yeah, he uh, kind of rewards kind of the faith that the priest had told him to have in humanity, even if it
Yeah,
took a little while. He kind of persevered.
yeah.
This is when, and I'm skipping around a little bit. Uh, Prior to this happening, he obviously learns of Zod's plan and a little bit of Jor-El's plan of we're gonna take over this planet, and you gotta build it off something.
Yeah.
We later learn that Jor-El's intention was for him to kind of be the binding piece between Kryptonians and humans, where Zod is very focused on what they've historically always done, almost in like a Independence Day,
Oh
the
yeah.
villain, the aliens, where they just go planet to planet and they harvest and they destroy everything and they use up the resources and then they go on to something else.
Yep.
Um, I did want to make a comment on how this did have a very. I,
Excuse me.
have you been part of the Star Wars? Have you watched the majority of the Star Wars movies?
Yes,
Okay.
I have seen all of them or most of them. The
Okay.
only one I haven't watched is Solo. I tried and I got kicked off in like 5 minutes.
Well,
I
that's the
wasn't.
worst one, even if
Yeah.
everyone hates it. That's the worst one. This was a very Star Wars-esque type of built story where you have a prodigy, Luke
Hmm.
Skywalker, Superman, kind of a last hope type person. You got a main villain, and that's the central part of the story. However, you have the ancillary characters and the side characters that are actually the ones that destroy the weapon, destroy the bad guy behind the scenes, while the two main characters are kind of fighting. And I really felt that in this movie because of the plan they had to do with the throwing the Phantom Drive into the other Phantom Drive,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so it really felt like a side mission that you saw in like really four of the other Star Wars movies where they're trying to destroy either the Death Star or the Death Base, etc.
Yeah.
So it kind of felt that way to me, which I didn't mind. It was nice to see that in a, if you have the whole focus, you don't on Superman and Zod, you don't need the other characters.
Right. Yeah, I get that, and I see it. And you're absolutely right, because I mean, if you think about it in a lot of those ways, like Leia is Lois, you know. Uh,
Right.
uh, Chris Maloney's the rogue pilot, like
Yep.
Han Solo.
Yep.
Uh, no Chewie, no Chewie involved.
No.
Um, but yeah, yeah, I can kind of see that. I, you know, I can enjoy Star Wars, but I am so much more of a DC Batman Superman lore person than
Oh, for sure.
I could ever try to get in Star Wars. Not that Star Wars is bad. Uh, it's just I I don't know. I this That's what's so great about this movie overall is it just if to me it didn't really feel like anything else. And because I'm not like a giant Star Wars person, that never really clicked into me. Although I can see the similarities, you know.
Yeah.
Um, it was just it was such, and I've said this in another one when we talk specifically about Henry Cavill, but to me, Man of Steel in general as a reboot, a restart, not only of Superman but the DC universe visually, it was very jarring because of how real world it was. You know, Dark Knight was Dark Knight. The Dark Knight Rises went off into a little bit of campiness, even though it was a Chris Nolan film. There were some parts of it that were kind of funny if you think about
Right.
it.
Yeah.
But this was
But
just real world God, real world consequences.
right, because you would imagine reading comics that there are so many comics where Superman's like, all right, bad guy comes in town. Well, I'm going to use my super breath
Yeah,
to knock them out of the atmosphere, and all right, it's over. Like that's not the way the movie went. There is
no,
no
not
easy
at all.
solution, you know. But I also don't, Superman's singular focus to defeat Zod was all that he was going to think about. He wasn't going to say, let's ram something into another something that's going to create a black hole. I mean,
Yeah,
he's focused on Zod, someone that's trying to tear down the world that he's known for 30 years or however old, 33 years. I did kind of want to get your comment on, one of the themes out after this movie was this can't be Superman. 3 million people died. Like, Superman doesn't let people die. Look at all this destruction he caused. How could this be the Superman that we love? This is too dark of a Superman.
uh, was it 3 million people or was it like
Yeah,
three?
that number, I'm going to look that number up. I want to say I saw that somewhere.
I don't remember 3 million. I feel like it was more like a 9/11 event where like thousands. Oh yeah, that's right. Because even Bruce says it in BBS. He's like, "Look at the dead, or count the dead, Alfred. Thousands of people. What's next? Millions." Uh,
Okay,
so it is
okay,
in the
where the hell did I
thousands.
get? Okay, yeah, I think 5,000 people.
Yeah, that seems about right. It seemed like two 9/11s. You know what I mean?
Okay,
With that
gotcha.
ship going through so many buildings. Um, I I I think it is a in this day and age, I think it's a very true Superman story. And I think the idea is he saved the world, the entire planet, from being terraformed into another planet. The cost, yes, was 5,000 people, and that's terrible. But in a real world scenario with a real world godlike figure taking on another real world godlike figure with evil intentions, which don't seem evil to the villain, but is evil
Right.
to the rest of the world. Um, you
Well, and what
know,
are the stakes too if you have no one die?
right? Exactly. I mean, it's like a bad bar fight. You know what I mean?
Right.
You just get
Yeah.
kicked out of the you get kicked out of the bar. But
Yeah, I agree. And I think it. Zod became so focused on just fighting Superman the minute that his ship was destroyed and he was kind of beyond stranded that he didn't make the comment about I'm going to kill everybody one by one until they kind of drop into the museum.
Right.
So he wasn't just, completely decided upon, I'm going to use my X-ray vision or I'm going to use my heat vision and I'm going to mow down all of these buildings.
Right.
Which I think if he was focused solely on killing people, he would have. But he was having to focus on Cal because I'm sure Cal probably pissed him off that he trained on a farm.
Well, and when again, he's Zod didn't have to adapt to the to Earth's atmosphere until Superman crashed his ship.
Right.
And so that whole time, all Zod's plan was to create a new Krypton so his people could live. He
Right.
wasn't there to say, "I'm here to kill all the human race." Humans,
Right.
you know what I mean? That was never his purpose. His purpose was to live and be able to have a continuation of his people. And so when he gets busted out of the ship and he's learning about his fucking jumping around and bear clawing up walls and even his heat vision, like he's learning to control all that while in the middle of this giant fight against the one man who can defeat him, who has the ability to defeat him and his purpose.
Well, along with like the coolest probably in-air fight sequence that
Oh
probably
my
changed
god.
how in-air fight sequences have been shot since then. Is
The,
it the most, Superman has to make the decision to kill Zod because Zod says he will never stop. And so Superman's finally like, I can't hurt him. He can't hurt me, just general fighting.
I have
It's
to
the most
stop him.
unconvincing way to kill a villain like that to me. Because you're telling me a neck break after he has been barreling through buildings, getting Superman punched through buildings, that his neck isn't strong?
I don't think it's his neck. I think it's the idea of breaking his neck. Of just breaking the bones. So just because his muscles
But how
and
did the
everything.
other bone not break?
See, I don't know. I mean, his so he's taking punches, right?
Right.
Uh, Also,
He's
still in his
crashing
arm.
through
So
buildings.
here's one point. He doesn't have armor around his neck. He's got a full suit, but it stops at his neck.
But I would assume
So
he's taking face punches.
I would assume that too. Um, that's probably one of those gray areas where you like gotta suspend your disbelief and be like, all right, it's kind of almost like zombies. It's like the one way to do it is this way, and that's how you get it done.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and he had him in close quarters, and obviously, I mean, Zod wasn't dead or hurt, but he was beaten enough to where he was on the ground, and
Right. Maybe he's a little bit
Superman
weak.
was able, yeah, Superman was able to take position, right? That's also another strength uh, Superman has. He's been on Earth for 30 years. This dude's been on Earth for a day, so his his muscles have not only been accustomed to this and thrive in it, but Zod's is still maybe getting used to it and settling in. So
Right, because
there's
he
a
doesn't have the full armor on where he showed absolute dominance over
right.
Superman.
He breaks it off because he thinks he doesn't need it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it did seem like a little bit more fair of a fight, at least kind of a back and forth. Although Zod did have some upper hands. Yeah, I mean, I guess Zod kind of had the upper hand all the way through until like the very, very end.
Yeah.
I think also though that in that moment, was not thinking, I need to live through this. He was saying, let me see what you're willing to do.
That's true.
I'm going to laser this family. Now let's see what I can get away with. He
Right.
probably didn't expect Superman, who at that point, maybe you could argue he was taking it easy because he didn't want to kill him.
Well, and maybe it's also the battle of the purposes. Zod
Right.
serves one purpose, and that is for his people.
Right.
And maybe Clark found out his purpose by killing Zod, which is like, I'm here to not save the world, but save as many of the people of this world that I can, because
Right.
this is my world. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so many of them have already been taken out. Am I willing to do what's necessary to save these people right in front of me? That
Right.
involves not a building falling or someone threatening their life, but or not a building falling or something that doesn't involve another person. This is the first time where it's like, I am a murderer, or I'm gonna be a murderer. I'm gonna kill these people unless you murder me. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
that essentially is that big decision that Clark's father, Jonathan, was like, you're gonna have to make a choice one day. What type of man do you want to be?
Right.
And
Yeah.
also, I want to get to 2 points that were talked about earlier that I've been kind of stewing on.
All
Uh,
right.
One, as far as flight battles and stuff, I would go as far to say Zach not only changed a Superman flight visual or flight slash fight visual that we haven't really seen capable before, but he brought the same shit with Batman. He defined what a Batman fight is.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Any Batman fight from BVS on, you have the highest gold standard bar to either achieve or surpass. I
Right.
mean, Nolan's trilogy, yeah, there was fighting, but it was so disjointed. There were moves and punches and stuff, but it didn't. Now, after seeing what we saw in BVS and seeing Batman fight that way and seeing the shots that were, the choreography and the shots, uh, there is no going back from that. Anything that doesn't hit that bar, I mean, you might as well get another director and restart the franchise again, because it's not gonna, no one's gonna settle for that.
Yeah. The
It'll
pressure is
always be
on.
held to that.
Yeah, the pressure is on Pattinson to really, and his stunt double to, and the coordinators to really put a good fight scene together.
I mean, I would say the pressure's on Matt Reeves, not necessarily Pattinson. Pattinson's just got to get in there and learn the moves.
That's true.
Matt Reeves has got to bring in a stunt coordinator slash choreographer to. I mean, here's me. Here's what I would do if I ever am lucky enough to be put in that type of position. If I was in that position right now, I would be like, either get me Chad Stileski or whatever from John Wick, or get me the guys that did the raid. I don't know
Oh,
if you
yeah.
ever, I don't know if you ever seen
Yeah.
the raid or the raid 2, but that is
Yeah,
just
you
some next
recommended it to me.
level, dude. That is so hardcore, next level fight choreography that like someone like Batman, yeah, he's the world's greatest detective, but he also left and studied martial arts for most of his youth. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He is
Yep.
a fighter. He is a fighter in every iteration of the comic. He's a fighter. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, he takes on multiple guys at once, which is exactly what we saw.
yep, and I mean successfully. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was as
Even
brutal a
yeah,
Batman. That's why I like that Batman the most. As brutal a Batman, and back to Cavill in that fight scene. If you think about it, what did we expect from in-air flights? For them to fly towards each other, level out, straighten up, throw a punch, fly over here. I mean, you literally are horizontal fighting
yeah. I you know
and traveling through air. I mean,
I can't even think of it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I think in the previous iteration, like Brandon Routh, which no disrespect to Brandon Routh, I thought he was a good actor and a good replacement for Reeve. And then I even thought he was great in the crossover as like a Kingdom Come Superman. But
yep,
in Superman Returns before Cavill, I mean, it was more about the fact that he was Superman. You saw a bullet hit his eye and not pierce it and fall to the ground, and they're like, "Oh my God, Superman
right,
special effects." But then you see the straight up fights and flights where it's like, "Holy fuck," you know?
yeah, yeah. I remember like mind being blown during that part.
Yeah, me too. And the music going along with it. You know what I mean? That's what's so great about the Zach slash Hans Zimmer duo, which I've gone on my own personal record and said I think Hans Zimmer is probably the best modern day composer we have. Um, but he did the same thing for Man of Steel for this new iteration of Superman that he did for Batman in the Dark Knight, which is he takes these little elements of the parts you love about the old themes, the catchiness of it, and then just turns it on its head and brings it to you in this different way, in a modernized way where it's just it pulls on all your heartstrings and it feels familiar and it's still brand new at the same time, and it's just uh, for me as an audience member and a fan, it's very fulfilling.
Yeah, and a lot of people are always, as we try to rush to call things and the best or try to rank things, I will always hear the, Richard Donner Superman theme and immediately know that's Superman.
Right.
But the Man of Steel theme for Superman kind of slowly builds. You hear it really for the not the first time, but really when he's trying to learn to fly.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's so good.
Yeah.
It means more than just the trumpet that you hear in Donner, at least to me.
Yeah.
But I will admit that I always will think of, and in a way that I think Danny Elfman's 1989 Batman theme will always be the Batman theme.
Yep.
For me, I still recognize that the Adam West kind of cartoon sounding Batman theme will always be the Batman theme to me.
Yeah. I will always recognize that stuff, but for
Right.
me, like you said
Yeah, I
though,
prefer the other. Right.
yeah, I still, even though I like what Junkie XL has done, and I am waiting to see the continuation of that and Justice League. I mean, I'm gonna get that Justice League soundtrack as soon as it hits. Uh, I I was not the biggest fan of his Batman. He calls it the Batman Suite or whatever. I guess what he believes is the theme. Although I love the other parts, the other Batman sounds he put in as far as like parts in the movie.
Yeah.
But Hans Zimmer's Dark Knight theme. I mean, I'm anytime I think of Batman, I hear Hans Zimmer stuff now. That's where I'm at in my life. Uh,
Oh yeah.
I
Hans
mean,
Zimmer is like, short of John Williams, who just has
yep,
such a yeah. Hans Zimmer is the guy for themes.
yeah, and I mean his Batman theme from The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. I mean, that'll just that gets me amped. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think the Dark Knight Rises soundtrack is very underrated compared to the
Oh,
Dark Knight. Both of them are
I
both of
couldn't
them
agree with you
are
more.
good.
I not only love what he did with Batman, but Catwoman's theme, that
Yeah, man. Yeah.
you know what I mean? That like kind of
Yep.
mysterious kind of thing, and then fucking Bane that
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Going
Like
from on Dark Knight Rises, if you go from I think it's track 2 on thin ice straight
yeah,
into
yep,
Gotham's
yep,
Reckoning,
yep,
money.
yep,
So
100%.
we we always get off target
I
back
know, I know.
on stuff, but
That's how
yeah.
Batman we are.
But I do think the Man of Steel soundtrack is awesome, and it really overlaid over the whole movie really good to an origin story that we've known. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that combination of you see 20 minutes at Krypton, kind of the historical backfighting that happened there, really General Zod's motivations that are not the stoic General Zod that we see in the original 1978 Superman. We
Mm-hmm.
get to see kind of a crazed lunatic Zod that would really be a detriment if he was allowed just to live on Earth.
We say crazed, but it's a crazy that is based in a focus. You know what I mean? He's
Well,
not.
that's the only craze there is, chaotic. I think that's his
Yes,
focus is to just be unpredictable, but it's still a focus.
I'm an agent of
He still
chaos.
has planning. It's not like just random, here, I'm gonna do this. There's always still a plan behind things,
Yeah.
and so it's still crazy even if it's a little different.
Yep. I want to get back to the other point because the whole the fight flight thing that Zach did for Superman and the fighting for Batman was the one I wanted to kind of get back to. But the other thing I wanted to hit back on too before I forget is the idea of religion. You know, we talked about Superman being the Jesus figure or whatever. But what's so great again about Zack Snyder is just because he is a man of faith and he shows that faith through this movie, he also shows the inclusion of different religions vis-a-vis, or if you want to say it that way, with Wonder Woman and like Greek mythology. That's also
Right.
very real in this world.
Right.
He merges these ideas, these parallel ideas of like Greek mythology and Christianity through Superman and Wonder Woman, and then even a lost uh, kind of world with Atlantis. And I think what's great,
Not to mention just the new gods with Darkseid,
right,
Steppenwolf.
right, and that's just straight up in DC. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they aren't here yet, but exactly like, uh, Zach's bringing all these ideas in, which I think in a way stresses how good he is on the idea of inclusivity. I think that's how you should say it. Inclusiveness, inclusivity.
Right.
You know
I
what I
think
mean.
while you had the focus maybe on Zach's viewpoints on Christianity, I think he just liked introducing the religious aspect to the film
Right,
and kind of left that open to whatever your deity is.
right.
He could do this, X, Y, Z. He allows them all to flourish in
And
varying
coexist.
degrees, obviously, but he at least represents an amount of them.
And that and
And that does also roll into BVS because a lot of the conversation is he a god that's too powerful? They put false god onto his chest on the statue. So he doesn't
right.
shy away from that as we transition movies.
And I think that's what's going to be super cool about Justice League is it's going to be all of those ideas on a team. So you've got your Greek mythology person in Wonder Woman. You've got your Jesus figure in Superman. You have humanity and Batman. You
Right.
have um,
You have a little humanity in Flash too, the optimism,
yeah, and
maybe.
yeah, I think I was trying to figure out what his kind of area would be in because I think
Well,
what
Speed Force has maybe its own little like set of rules, and
yeah,
maybe
it's its
not necessarily
own
regulated, but
thing.
right,
Maybe that's to kind of be, I don't want to say atheist, but in this idea of like they exist outside of gods because they can go through time. You know what I mean?
right, and
And
he sort of like, and it's got its own set of rules that he's got to
right,
follow. Yeah,
right.
so I think that's a good commentary on
And then
that.
you have uh Cyborg, and it's
That
been
to
what.
me, if you had to do maybe the kind of atheist, maybe kind of viewpoint of science first, we're going to explain
Yes,
this through
yes,
logic,
yes. Yeah.
technology, rules. I could kind of see that for him if we're trying to fit things into
I,
kind of
I was
boxes.
I was also thinking, he's widely said, and Zach has kind of backed him up, and vice versa, that like he's gonna be the heart of the Justice League. I mean, he essentially loses his life and most of his body, and
Right.
is resurrected by a foreign alien science.
Well, I think we have to agree that he is the character that we'll see the most new stuff from in his new version.
Oh
Because it
yeah,
seemed like his entire storyline was cut out.
yeah. Uh, I completely agree, and I say I wanted to talk about all that to say like I really feel like when Justice League comes out, the real Justice League, it's it's gonna be this new idea of a real team. It's not gonna be uh, your Marvel playbook type of thing. It's it's going to be just as different as Man of Steel was and as Batman versus
Well,
Superman
and part
was.
of that too, and obviously we're getting off track again,
No, yeah,
but
yeah.
and we'll talk about it when we review Justice League. But we only have known these characters as part of team up movies because we were introduced to literally everybody through the scope of
Superman.
team movie. We see Superman. We don't get a separate Batman movie. We
Nope.
don't get a separate Wonder Woman movie when we first see them.
Hmm.
We see Wonder Woman after that movie. So I
Right.
think that's why it feels more like a team atmosphere because these aren't individuals just coming together. They were recruited right away.
For a
But
purpose.
again, we'll get into that. We'll get into Justice League when we review it.
Yeah, totally. Uh, yeah, I just wanted to touch back on those 2 points. One other thing I want to throw in there too, because we're talking about how it shows the history of Krypton, and then in BVS, it kind of shows you the history of Earth dealing with Superman, or
Right.
or not necessarily history, but a history the day that Superman showed up. Like the day something happened, kind of like
Well, someone did do a mashup of the opening of Batman vs Superman with the closing fight scene of
hmm
Man of Steel, so that you kind of see how those things go together. And
yeah,
I've always kind of wondered, you're telling me Lois Lane spends a month maybe tracking down who Superman is, realizing he's a good guy, and the world's greatest detective is swayed because his building went down in Metropolis.
yeah.
To where there is absolutely nothing you can tell him at that point. Even his guiding word of Alfred, that this guy is not your enemy. It doesn't matter to him.
I
That has
think
changed my viewpoint. We'll get into it in Batman vs Superman, but that has changed my viewpoint on how that Batman is portrayed. Because there's no logic. Doesn't matter. Like the tragedy happens and blind rage.
I
For
see
for
your
2 years, because 18 months goes by before it picks up back up in BVS.
I see your point and I disagree. And well, I agree with some of it, but I disagree for the overall thing because uh this, at least from what we know right now, is the first time that Batman, Bruce Wayne, understands that there is alien life. All he's dealt with are like fucked up villains and mutant style villains like Killer Croc and stuff that are still
But that's
of
no different than Lois. Lois only sees the seedy world of her journalism. She sees an alien, and her idea is not, holy shit, well, he needs to fucking die. Now,
well
maybe it's under
he saved her.
circumstances. Maybe there's some. That's true too. He saved her.
I
Yeah, maybe
think,
that because she was scared of him initially.
yeah. I mean, he
Yeah,
shot
maybe
flame.
maybe, maybe that's true. I just have a hard time if we're going to really build up on the detective side of Batman, which we didn't see from Ben Affleck's side of it. We get to see him do a little bit into the white Portuguese ship that
Right.
ended up, blah blah blah. But I think I was just a little disappointed from just the absolute. You couldn't tell him anything. Like he wasn't going to do any digging past what he thought.
So I will say, I think part of it is because he is, he's talked about it. He says it in the movie. It's like 20 years in Gotham, Alfred. We've seen how many good guys are left, how many stayed that way.
Yeah, he's
Villain
cynical for sure.
criminals are like weeds. Da 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 da. He fully acknowledged. He's like, criminals are like weeds, Alfred, and then he's like, this is about the future of the world because,
I think he was scared.
oh yeah, it's fear. I mean, you want to
Yeah,
talk
I think
about
it was
fear, breathe it
absolute.
in. He was scared, and then when you
You,
see
you
when
don't
he's
fear weeds. You just go pull weeds. You know they're
right,
going to come back, but that's it. But yeah, this was like a hurricane.
I would aim you more in that way as far as blind rage based in fear, uh, because he's never ever had to deal with anything like that. It's the first time for
Right.
any of this, and to his credit, he does the most detective work he can, where he's like, shit,
Well, and also he makes a comment about how Daily Planet only writes puff pieces.
right.
This guy can't be all good. So okay, maybe yeah, that maybe sways me a little bit. I just kind of figured you would really see, and that maybe that's not the story to tell. The story is to tell the fight that happens.
I
So
think an even bigger backstory is he got the world's greatest detective, and Lex Luthor is smarter than him.
yeah, that clearly bothers me too.
Yeah, um, but that also tells of what this Lex Luthor is he's a prodigy.
Right.
He's smarter than anyone.
Well, I will say that Man of Steel I think has 55% or so on Rotten Tomato, and at the time being, after Batman versus Superman, and then of course into the Justice League that we got,
Ugh.
I've learned to appreciate it more.
Oh yeah.
After initially when Man of Steel came out, I was just kind of indifferent to it, partly because I just thought it was a one and done because we had seen Superman Returns with Brandon Ruth be a one and done. The minute I saw there was an Easter egg that said "Keep calm and call Batman"
Hmm.
in the subway little fights thing they had, that immediately made me like the movie more because I was like, oh, look at these other Easter eggs they have.
See, I didn't
See the
even see
LexCorp
that.
building.
I saw that, and
Yeah,
then I saw the Wayne satellite, and that's when I was like, "Oh shit!" So Batman's in this world.
yeah, we see the LexCorp like gas tank truck or oil tanker
Yeah.
truck that gets exploded in the thing, and there's also a I think there was a nod to what's the company that's involved with Cyborg's transformation?
Oh, Star Labs.
Yeah, we see a Star Labs sign on a building.
Well,
So you
and
really got the sense of this isn't just, hey, Superman movie, this is what we got. I think they left it open and enough to where Zach said, look at all the possibilities we got. And then we
yeah,
know that, oh, he's got a plan.
yeah, I agree.
So I would say overall, I've warmed way up to the movie. As far as rewatchable, I would probably, I'll rank this movie 1 to 10, probably about maybe a 7.
Yeah, I'd say about the same 7 or 8.
Rewatchability, if it's on TV, I'm not watching it.
Yeah,
I'll put it that way.
I kind of wonder if there is a director's cut of Man
I
of
do too.
Steel.
I was wondering that. I'm sure he does. I mean, the movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Hmm.
But if everyone knows Zack Snyder has an ultimate cut to everything except maybe Sucker Punch.
No, I believe he's got one of
And
that too. I've heard there's two cuts to that.
was there an ultimate? I don't think there was an ultimate of
Or was it just
300.
directors?
I think
Uh,
it was just,
I don't know about the 300 one.
well, I don't remember how long 300 was either. It didn't seem super, super long. He just has a history of, extremely long movies that, hey, has a longer version.
Hmm.
And I think that when we do the review of BVS, obviously we'll be discussing, why the Ultimate Edition is key for your understanding of the movie. And so if there is an Ultimate Superman version out there, I want it because it's going to give you more backstory. Um, we'll never see the light of day. We'll never see it, but it would be beneficial to the Snyderverse.
Yeah, I agree. Um, it's
Where do you rank Man of Steel, 1 to 10?
sorry. It says there's. I was looking up at how many different versions of 300 is there. I can't get a full answer. As far as a ranking of 1 to 10 for Man of Steel, I'd probably say 7 or 8. Uh, I would say more towards the 8 because I think it's a great origin story of a film for him.
Right.
Um, and I also think it's a great first outing for that Superman, even though it's just, a lot of people were saying it was like destruction porn to an extent. And I was like, I get that, but Zach is so much deeper as a filmmaker than just blowing stuff up for no reason. You know what I mean? This, like you said, is a consequence to these types of beings on this world, and
Right.
so that I think that really, for me, elevates it to a higher standard, like a 8, probably.
Right.
And I would say
Yeah. So
BB. I would
if
say
it's on TV and you catch it, are you like, oh, all right, don't change it. I'm gonna finish this.
no, and part of that is because I don't have TV. I don't have cable. I
Okay.
just do internet. But I will say I have it on DVD and Blu-ray.
I
Uh,
will
I,
I will randomly if I'm like on YouTube on the YouTube app on my TV,
mhm.
I'll see like Superman fight scene. I'll watch that.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like a 6 minute scene or something.
yeah. I if I'm gonna watch it, I will try to sit down and watch it. I like try to make the time for it. Um,
Okay.
Now, BVS Ultimate Edition, always and forever. Uh, I'll
Oh,
watch that.
100%.
I'll
I'll
watch
watch
that
it.
any time of day. That to me is like a 9.3 out of 10.
Yes.
I
Agreed.
mean, it's just, and again, I keep saying and again. It's just, well, you know what? I'm not even gonna say anything. We'll get into it when we go over it because it's for me. It's like it's so much. It's so good, and it gets better every time. Honestly.
Yes, I agree. Well, that's I would say our review on Man of Steel.
Yeah, and for those of you listening, if you like what you hear and you like hearing more of it, and you like the rest of our episodes, and you want to ask us questions, you can reach out to us on supertheorypod@gmail.com and write us an email if you want to ask us any questions. And yeah, we have a Twitter account, we have Instagram, we have a Facebook. It's all at supertheorypod. And next time around, looks like we're probably just going to be doing an analysis of Batman vs Superman Ultimate Edition. Because we're trying to lead up to fandom, big stuff coming.
Yes, three weeks or so.
Yes, sir. August 22nd, Saturday, a 24-hour event. I may take off of work. Who knows? It could get crazy. I'm always looking for a good reason to skip work.
Yeah.
But yeah, as always, Brandon Martin with Chris Green. Thank you guys so much for listening and checking us out. We appreciate you.
Yep. Thanks, guys.